Right. Are we good? Should I just start?
We're good. Say hello.
Hi, I'm Vinaya Shivkumar, co-chair of the LookUp Teen Leadership Council. To varying degrees of success, policymakers around the world have been challenged to ensure that big tech companies, especially Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, are held accountable for protecting children and teens online. This next session is designed to spark conversations around the roles and responsibilities of business, government, and even ourselves. Massachusetts Senator Edward Markey has been an unmatched leader in Congress, protecting children and teens online for nearly 40 years. He was the original House author of the Children's Online Privacy Protect Act in 1998, and recently reintroduced the KIDS Act, legislation to stop online practices such as manipulative marketing, amplification of harmful content, and damaging design features which threaten kids online. While he could not be with us in person today, he did record a few words of support and encouragement for LookUp's global Y4Y community. Following Senator Markey's remarks, Rishi Barwani from Accountable Tech will lead a live discussion with youth in response to the whistleblowers and Facebook hearings in Washington. Get ready to get motivated.
The creators of the social dilemma for having me today. And hello and thank you to LookUp and the creators of the social dilemma for having me today. And thank you to all of the participants in today's Y4YiSummit. It is an honor to address this group of young change makers, and I'm so glad that you are focusing today on how to create a healthy, inclusive, and responsible digital world. We've got a lot of work to do, because here's the unfortunate truth. Today, the big tech business model prioritizes money over mental health, profits over people. And it's clear that Silicon Valley behemoths cannot be trusted to do the right thing by themselves. So Congress has an obligation to rein in these powerful platforms. Simply put, we shouldn't have computer code without a code of conduct. And I'm going to tell you that these companies don't see children and teens as outcomes. In fact, we know that big tech works hard to target young users and to hook them at any cost. You know better than I that in 2021, when kids and teens learn, play, and communicate, they often do it online. So unfortunately, young people do not have the protections they need to safely navigate the digital ecosystem. And the ongoing COVID pandemic has made the mission of protecting young people online all the more urgent. Some kids have suffered from not being connected, exacerbating the homework gap. It's experienced by millions of students. Other kids have been spending more time than ever online. The risks to their well-being are more pressing than ever. That's why we introduced the Kids Internet Design and Safety Act, the KIDS Act. My legislation bans damaging website designs. Features like autoplay, push alerts that are harmful to kids, limits advertising and commercial content like product placement and influencer marketing to kids, and prohibits amplification of harmful and violent content to children. It's time for Congress to pass a bold agenda, including the KIDS Act, to make the internet a safer space for young people. Recent reporting on Facebook's internal research shows just how high the stakes are. According to Facebook's own research, teen users consistently blame Instagram for increases in their anxiety and depression. In fact, 32% of teen girls said that when they felt bad about their bodies, Instagram made them feel worse. And 6% of American teen users trace their desire to kill themselves to Instagram. Can I say that again? 6% of American teen users trace their desire to kill themselves to Instagram. That's simply unacceptable. So when a Facebook executive recently came to testify before Congress, I demanded answers and called Instagram what it is. Instagram is just like big tobacco pushing a product that they know is harmful to the health of young people, pushing it to them early, and also Facebook can make money. And I believe the kids today should have the right to develop, the right to grow up, the right to make mistakes without being manipulated and tracked by some of the most powerful companies in history. It's time for the adults in the room to step in and take action. It's time to stop the big tech that is trying to harm children, young people in our country. And we've got to stop it in its tracks and say loud and clear, enough is enough. So I know that they're going to fight us because I've had these bills for years and they keep saying, Senator Markey, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not an expert. Well, here's my message to them. The people don't trust the experts anymore. The experts who have drafted, created these algorithms that target young people. The people are the experts. They know that this is dangerous for their children. So all I can say is thank you all for the young people who are participating in today's event, for your commitment to making the digital world a better place for you and the next generation. This fight is going to continue until we win, but you are the leaders. You are the ones who are inspiring us to pass the legislation to just change business as usual in the tech world. Thank you for all that you are doing.
Great. So if our panelists can come join us, we'll turn it over to Rishi Barhwani from Accountable Tech.
That sounds great. Thanks, Susan. That was quite a video from Senator Markey. Before facilitating the conversation, let's do just some quick introductions. My name is Rishi Barhwani, Director of Partnerships and Policy at Accountable Tech, a relatively new advocacy group that's fighting for structural reforms to rein in big tech societal harms and safeguard our democracy. Vinaya, I'll kick it over to you.
Hi, my name is Vinaya. I'm a high school junior at Ursuline Academy here in Ohio. And like you guys know, I'm also one of the co-chairs for LookUp's Teen Leadership Council.
Great. Seth, do you want to go next?
I'm Seth Boonev. I'm the author of Screenfarers Nurturing Deliberate Action in a Digital World, which is about persuasive design and related ways that we're affected by digital technologies and what we can do to take back our sort of autonomy over how our minds are shaped by these things. And I'm a member of the Children's Screen Time Action Network and working on developing programs that address the harms of tech at a community level rather than just an individual and societal level.
Love that. John, do you want to go ahead next?
Yeah, sure. Hey, nice to be here with you all. My name's John. I'm an impact consultant with the nonprofit We Stand United, which is a 501c4 that was founded in 2016 by Mark Ruffalo and a bunch of other creatives and political strategists. So I help activists shape media narratives and build momentum around systemic issues. And before that, I was the politics reporter at MTV News, where I covered the impact of technology on teen mental health. So I'm very well versed in the issue and glad to be here with you all.
That's great. We're excited to have you, John. Beatrix, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi, I'm Bea. I'm really happy to be here too, or Beatrix. I'm 17 and I live in New York City, go to Riverdale Country School. I've been working with Boston Children's Hospital's newly launched Digital Wellness Lab as their head of youth advisory board. I help them content strategize and I also blog for them. And I also pioneered Riverdale's first digital citizenship club. And I also still work with my old middle school in California, teaching media literacy classes to them as well over Zoom. And I also am on the Teen Leadership Council for lookup.live.
Incredible. Shivani?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Shivani and I'm currently a senior in high school from Atlanta, Georgia. I am the Director of Programs and Partnerships on LookUp's Teen Leadership Council, and I'm working on a lot of initiatives to spread awareness. And one of those includes our Teen Toolkit. Another one is the Disconnect to Reconnect podcast.
Great. Charlie?
Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie Golisic. I'm currently a sophomore in college at Bowdoin College, where I'm majoring in English and Digital Studies, and I'm here as part of the Live More Youth Council, a Minnesota-based nonprofit focused on digital well-being for youth.
Great. And last but certainly not least, Maggie.
Hi, thank you, Rishi. My name is Magali. I come from Mexico City, but I'm based in San Diego. I studied a master's in social innovation at the University of San Diego, and I'm working with LookUp in the business development department, helping to develop all their programs and supporting them with partnerships. And I really believe in their mission. So and I do other things in social innovation. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, I'll say very quickly how inspiring it is to be on a panel with all of you amazing young people, and the work that you all are already doing is just inspiring and brings a huge smile to my face. So I'd love for this conversation to be free flowing. We don't need to use the raise hand function. We could just jump right in. And throughout this conversation, I'll share my screen and play a few snippets from the hearings that took place over the course of the past few weeks. It might be helpful for me to just recap. I know so many of you and those who are tuning in are tracking this issue closely, but I guess 3 weeks ago now, the Wall Street Journal revealed a trove of documents that proved what I think many of us have been saying for some time. Some of the notes that Senator Markey struck in that video, that Facebook is a company that's going to choose profits over people and are willing to drive and exacerbate so many harms, including many of the harms to young people, which were highlighted in now 2 Senate subcommittee hearings, a committee that Senator Markey sits on. And so before sharing snippets from the hearing, I'd love to just hear reactions to what Senator Markey had to say. I'm a fan of the senators. He's usually a little bit rosier than he was in that video. That felt pretty doomsday. He's really painting this to be an issue that is, right up there, driving harms with issues like gun violence, with other issues that, should be prioritized above many of the others. What do you guys have to say about that? Is it really that stark?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to go ahead and jump in. I think from the words of Senator Markey and also some of the things that we've been hearing at these hearings, my initial reaction was how solutions that are proposed and the ideas that are proposed by Facebook were more reactive than preemptive. And the whole idea behind the fact is that really a lot of the algorithms and the content that's being pushed have the ability to influence the identities of young people. And that's like an insane amount of power that, if we could just take a time to think about that, the kind of content that we see, the kind of divisive, pushing that we're getting through the kind of content that we see is, serving to develop ourselves as a generation. And when our generation is being manipulated in terms of what our values and our morals are, I think that's a huge problem as to how it develops our perspective on life.
Does anybody else want to jump in? Do we agree that these platforms are manipulative?
Sure, I could jump in. I think that it certainly is as serious as he's presenting it. And I think my question is regulation at a government level able to actually address this problem? Because I think one of the reasons it's so tricky is that everything that is good about the internet is exactly the same things that are bad about it. I mean, the algorithms maybe could be improved and not be so intentionally manipulative, could be maybe not intentionally promoting divisive content, for example. But I mean, some of the harms started emerging unintentionally with even email. I've seen as an example of people compulsively checking email. That was long ago that started happening, and it wasn't designed for that. And you couldn't really design it so that it doesn't do that and still have the convenience. And so I think we're going to need more, perhaps regulation will be helpful, but I think we're going to need a cultural sort of community level and social kind of change of our values around this in order for anything to be effective.
I totally agree with both of them. I think it is as stark as was presented in the hearing because it's literally knocking down these fundamental pillars of society, like democracy, like basic happiness. And so I'm like, very glad that they're actually talking about all these broken promises that Facebook and, Mark Zuckerberg have promised, but like never went through. So I think that this is really fundamental, and I'm glad that it's actually taking place.
And I think it's really also important to note that social media is in a time of it's in a liminal period right now, and it hasn't been, so present until this kind of period of time. And I think we need to also allow it to evolve and grow and progress, just like we evolve and other things evolve. And it just needs time to grow into itself, and maybe perhaps even grow into a platform that can benefit us if we, formulate it too.
I'll chime in too here. I think in the hearing, like, it was really interesting watching Ed Markey's questioning in particular, because he focused, out of everyone who questioned the Facebook executive that day, he really focused on the core feature that makes these platforms so harmful to two things, right? Like teen mental health and democracy, and incentivizing political extremism. And that was when he focused on quantified popularity. It's a really interesting question that Seth brings up in terms of, like, how do you regulate like the core issue of quantified popularity, like the Kids Act does, when it's also the thing that makes it so engaging and so addictive and so fun by design. And also when it's so core to the business model of these companies that they're going to do everything in their power to divert away from regulating that. When the Facebook exec, as well as Masseri, who heads up Instagram, was questioned about dealing with this issue, if you listen closely to the line from Facebook, they're diverting away from quantified popularity and addressing that as much as possible, offering false solutions like nudging users to other content as if the issue won't be there on other forms of content, as well as encouraging teens to just take a break as if the issues won't be there when they get back. So it's very interesting, like, watching what Facebook executives don't want to talk about. I'm getting over a cold right now. I think, as horrifying as this is, though, in terms of the scale, what I would also emphasize, and I think we should be careful while emphasizing, is there's also a lot of, like, opportunity here, because out of every issue in Congress right now, this was the one thing that Democrats and Republicans, when you listen to them, you can't really tell who like is a Democrat or Republican. It's so bipartisan, the agreement on this. So as terrible as this is, there's also a lot of really, I think, exciting momentum in Congress around, like, actually passing legislation to fix this.
That's a great point, John. I want to emphasize two of them. One is the focus on the business model, because that is the connective tissue that drives the harms to young people and increasing rates of anxiety and depression. And it's the same thing that's causing more political division and leading to the proliferation of election not lies that caused, in my view, January 6th, the proliferation of COVID mis and disinformation that caused our president to say that Facebook's killing people. Those all come back to this engagement-driven business model. So thanks for highlighting that. And I'll just share a quick anecdote in a nod to your point on bipartisanship. Before joining Accountable Tech, I led tech policy for Cory Booker in the Senate. And there was a hearing with all the big tech bros, the big tech CEOs in November of 2020. And at that time, Senator Graham, who was the chair of the committee, made a point of mentioning the harms the platforms had on young people. And the feel around the whole room was like partisanship had been shelved for just that moment. And I remember Cory texting me quite quickly, wanting to change his remarks to give a nod to that issue. And so I think you're absolutely right, John, that when it comes to protecting our young people, there's a little bit more drive to reach a compromise, to reach consensus, and really address the issue. So I'm going to pause here for a second, share my screen, hope that I do that correctly, and play a short clip from the hearing. Okay, I think I've done it.
I just received by text, literally about 15 minutes ago, a message from someone in Connecticut. And I'm going to read it to you. It's from a dad. I'm in tears right now, watching your interaction with Frances Haugen. My 15-year-old daughter loved her body at 14, was on Instagram constantly, and maybe posting too much. Suddenly she started hating her body dysmorphia, now anorexia, and was in deep, deep trouble before we found treatment. I fear she'll never be the same. A broken heart.
Okay, so that I think took some of these issues we're talking about in the abstract and grounded them in a very real human story. Do folks have reactions or thoughts to that video?
So my first reaction, I started using social media in middle school, and it just reminded me that I was that 14-year-old girl once who was constantly aware of my body and tried everything I could, healthy and unhealthy measures, to get myself to this unrealistic standard of beauty. And so now looking back, I wish that there was, this dad seems very active in his daughter's life and constantly reaching out for solutions. But I feel like there's this just loophole that you can't escape almost when it comes to comparing yourselves and how you look with other people on Instagram. So, I mean, personally, I've gone through that and I know how it is to be on both sides of it. And so I think it's super critical that we find a tangible solution to help those girls in need, that unconscious, need of trying to be skinnier or look a certain way needs to be resolved right now. So.
Yeah, I mean, if I could jump in real quick, if for those of you who are familiar with the quote unquote that girl trend, it is a trend that is very popular on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and it's essentially this depiction of a young female woman who is, essentially perfect. They wake up early in the morning, they work out, they have a strong routine, they eat aesthetic looking foods, and it's this whole idea of, I am fit, I'm intelligent, I am, incredible in every sort of way possible. And, this has hundreds and thousands and almost millions of views and posts. And this idea is something that's propagated through what we're looking at, so these algorithms. And, it makes us think, what are we looking at really? Is this real? Is this not real? How do we differentiate? And I think people are getting better at that. We're getting better at identifying that, hey, this is not realistic. But at the same time, that psychologically is in the back of our head. We know this person is using a filter. We know this person might have photoshopped themselves. We know that there's, fancy coloring on this. But at the same time, it's well, this is what I want. This is my next standard for who I want to be. And that is, constantly propagated. And I think that's definitely a problem to address.
I completely, very much agree with all of that. And to add on to that, what I think makes social media so distinct from how body image issues might have operated before is that before the era of digital technologies or Web 2.0, it was very much local what you could see. And it was a lot harder for any random person to get a platform that spread as widely as people can spread their image on social media. So now, because social media has this global reach, these models, these portable models of perfection are forming, in which there are a small number of people who do seem perfect just based on the fact that they can get such a large following on social media. And because it's easier for these people to get a platform, it's easier for them to seem like a more achievable model of perfection just because it's so pervasive on these social platforms. We're no longer constrained to just having certain role models within our local communities, at our local shopping malls, for example. Now it's this new environment that is worldwide, and it's a lot easier that way to form global standards for what a perfect body might look like when a perfect body doesn't exist.
I think to jump in, that another element is that when so much of our interaction happens through these very visual platforms, and I think one of the effects of social media has been a breakdown in the kind of in-person social fabric. There's so much loneliness. We have less opportunity to really discover the other characteristics of people other than their appearance and on a deep level. And so I feel like part of the emphasis on image and body image in comparison is perhaps just a lack of getting, this can't be completely, it's not the whole thing, but like, I think the lack of those deeper, more meaningful relationships is partly playing into that. And another thing is that I think it goes beyond body image, and it goes beyond personal body image. I think one thing that's like I never see talked about is how it affects how you perceive other people, and it's very hard to avoid that happening. And another thing is how it, like, things beyond like personal appearance, like for example, landscapes, what's the effect of seeing all of the most beautiful buildings and mountains and whatever in the world on how you perceive the place that you live? Is that why places that have the most picturesque, landscapes are completely unaffordable to live because everyone's trying to be there right now? So yeah, I think it really affects like the entirety of life, this thing where you can go online and you can see the most, the best, the weirdest, the ugliest, the most beautiful. And how does that compare with what you actually experience every day?
Yeah, and I want to pull out something you said, Seth, that resonates with me, because it flies right in the face of how Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook executives advertise these tools and services, right? It's a social network. If you ask them, what do we do? What's your platform there for? Well, we connect people, and we are constantly connected. We are constantly, many of us, attached to our cell phones, to Instagram, to Twitter, and what you said, I think, is exactly right, that many of us feel more lonely despite being constantly connected to people in our social networks. And that resonates with me. I don't know if it resonates with other folks here who are on this panel.
I completely agree. And I was just thinking right now, I'm from Mexico, and I think about connecting to others is just social media, how I was born. But at the same time, I feel like in my generation, I see my parents, they didn't live the same situation as me. As I see my nephew, for example, with my brother, I completely see how my brother is in TikTok all the time, looking at or Instagram, looking at all this people following famous influencers or whoever, like anyone. And then my nephew that is 8 years old, I really think about what the impact will be, because he's asking that, what are you doing? Who are you looking at? What are you laughing? Who are you talking? Like that example that parents are giving to new children, like children that are coming into the world. Also, I think that it's very important to include them and see how can we change that behavior, because that's our responsibility right now, if I think about that.
Sorry.
Go ahead, you're first.
Adding on to what Maggie said, I asked my brother a question yesterday. I said, how many hours do you think you can go without using your iPad? And he's a 4th grader, so he's a relatively young kid. And he said, well, if I have my friends, I'll go without it. No, but I said, okay, no friends. You have a little bit of homework. Now what's your answer? And he said 0. And that was really, really shocking for me. Even though I knew it was coming, it was still shocking to hear it from his mouth. He doesn't know why it's 0, but he knows that the answer is 0, and that I see him walking around with his iPad. He's an iPad boy. I'll see him go into the bathroom with it. I'll see him come out. I'll see him eat with it. But like, I don't know. It's crazy, because when I was younger, it wasn't really like that. And we're not that far apart, but it's just really crazy.
Talking about like the not far apart thing, I think what is really shocking is just the drastic difference and different experiences that, for example, I have with my older sister regarding social media. I think that I started in middle school, same as most of the people on this panel, like, kind of absorbing social media, absorbing the body image and all that stuff. And, she, who's 4 years older than me, started that a little bit older and like not so much at such a malleable time in life. And I think just the experience, like between me and her and me and like a 4th grader or a 5th grader or even like a 6th grader, is so different, because it's evolving so rapidly. And I just wonder how we're ever going to be able to like kind of regulate that and keep up with that.
Yeah, I think that is one of the bigger challenges that we have. Regulation moves slow. I feel like I can say it as an alumni of working in Congress. It's not the most nimble institution, and so oftentimes the laws that they pass, they solve the problems of yesterday. But these Silicon Valley giants, they evolve, they adapt, they change their platforms, their tools, their targeting tactics, and it feels like a game of whack-a-mole that we've been losing for a little while. I'm going to go ahead and play another video here. Give me 1 second.
Kids who are bullied on Instagram, the bullying follows them home. It follows them into their bedrooms. The last thing they see before they go to bed at night is someone being cruel to them, or the first thing they see in the morning is someone being cruel to them. Kids are learning that their own friends, like people who they care about them, are cruel to them. Like, think about how that's going to impact their domestic relationships when they become 20-somethings or 30-somethings, to believe that people who care about you are mean to you. Facebook knows that parents today, because they didn't experience these things, they never experienced this addictive experience with a piece of technology, they give their children bad advice. They say things like, why don't you just stop using it? And so that Facebook's own research is aware that children express feelings of loneliness and struggling with these things because they can't even get support from their own parents. I don't understand how Facebook can know all these things and not escalate it to someone like Congress for help and support in navigating these problems.
So I think that touched on some of the themes that I was hearing from you all, sort of lack of understanding for, that parents might have for their kids dealing with addiction and the ways in which social media can be subtly manipulating them. I know, Bea, you mentioned that your sister is just a few years older than you, and the differences with how you guys are interacting with social media, or Vinaya, even with I think you said it was your cousin who's 4 years old. There's a little bit of an age gap, but it already feels like it's night and day. Do you guys have thoughts or reactions to Francis's testimony that I just shared?
Well, I think that parents don't really want to do the work sometimes, in some cases, to get educated and understand to a certain extent what social media is and how children interact with it. And I think it's important for parents to not expect children to understand the rules or unspoken, unwritten rules around social media. They should, educate themselves and be able to guide their child through it. And also schools should have curriculums and programs that students can reach out to in order to be able to have an open space to discuss, common digital citizenship and well-being online. And I just think that parents should do more work to understand and be able to empathize with their child when it comes to social media.
So when I watched that clip, I was reminded of another time when I was a speaker. It was with the Digital Wellness Institute, and the audience were parents who were seeking for advice on how they can help their kids through this digital wellness experience. And so I spoke about this one experience in 7th grade when my parents put me on this weird software called Disney Plus, where it basically shut down my whole phone. I came back and I just had access to nothing. My phone was with me, but I didn't have any access. But I saw my parents in that same time frame using their phone, going on Facebook, going on WhatsApp. And so I see my parents have evolved and now they're more considerate and more thoughtful and how I use my social media. But it's also like parents themselves are not doing it. So when they're still, having all these addictions and all these different flaws, I don't know if they're in the right place to order a kid to put down their phone or something. They can work through it and they can come up with strategies on how they can both reduce their time. But I feel like, there's a lot of ways that parents can help while understanding that this is new for the kid and for them. So that's what my gut reaction was.
Can I add something that I was just thinking when Beatrix and Benaya was saying? So I believe that there's one problem, and we think youth should solve the issue, or the government or the parents. I think we need to work together, that we should be bringing this huge, like bring all stakeholders and try to create this community where we can communicate and, as Beatrix was saying, educate, because I might be having kids in a few years and I might not know what the new technology will be from today, from in 2 years. So it's a matter of educating everyone and to understand how can we help each other. I don't know how, but I think we need to do something.
This is something that exactly this question of how can we have a kind of community collective response that I've been really thinking about a lot. And I think one element is that it really needs to happen on a level where people know each other, because how can you take a country or a state or a province or whatever and say, like, this is what you need, and all of you are going to have this solution. I think that like having all, the parents, having the kids, having the teachers, having everyone in a certain group sit down and go, what do we see as problems? What do we see as possible solutions? How can we move forward together and create agreements of some kind would be so important, because I think a huge part of the problem here is that the social media companies are super organized. They can act in a unified way within their company. As people who are interacting with this situation, we're just individuals. I can decide to not use these things, but I will be walking around in a world where no one else is present. And there are so many options when you can sit down with people around you and go, okay, we're going to do this. You could say we're going to, there's it could be limits on when or for what you're using these things, or whatever's appropriate. Yeah.
And I have a question here that came in from the audience, and it's, I think it's some of what we're wrestling here within this conversation. Do you all have policy recommendations or regulations that you might recommend to members of Congress? Because right now they're looking for new ideas for how to help. Do you guys have any suggestions for them?
First off, I think that tagging biased or unbiased or conspiracy content is a big must when it comes to regulations, as well as Photoshop. We have the technology to be able to identify it, and I think that we should use it in order to maintain a body image that is individual and unique and beautiful and not perfect or unattainable or photoshopped or filtered. I think that those are two very big things that they should implement.
Those are really good ideas. I think to add to that, we at MTV, we did a lot of research on this over the past year to try to get to the core of the issue, right? So there's a lot of research, I think, on social comparison. And I think at this point, the solutions are becoming pretty obvious. Going back to that first clip, for example, when you're comparing yourself on social media, especially like young people, there is a lot of research to show that people are not comparing themselves necessarily to the content of other people's posts, but to the engagement that those posts are getting. So this goes back to the quantified popularity issue that's sort of come to the fore with the Kids Act and with the hearings over the past couple of weeks. The same feature is also what incentivizes political extremism, right? If you think about the most extreme candidates on the left and the right, they're incentivized to chase those numbers that is the key driver of spreading conspiratorial content and controversial content, because that's what the algorithms promote. And then once you get to the top of the feed, because you've promoted that content, it translates into political power and mainstream media coverage. So when we're thinking about regulation around this and what's going to get at the heart of the matter, increasingly, I'm looking more and more at policies that tackle quantified popularity, which is what the Kids Act does that Ed Markey introduced, and in addition to a couple of other things, including like getting rid of push notifications and influencer marketing. But the core issue really is quantified popularity. I mean, and it's not that hard to imagine a version of social media where you don't have quantified popularity, right? Like you'll still be able to connect with your friends. You'll still be able to find community with other people. It will not be as engaging. It won't be as fun because you're not getting all of the, like maybe public notifications about, comments and followers. Not that you'd get rid of it altogether. It just wouldn't be public. But of course, for a consumer, it's like, is that really a terrible thing if your brain is not so wrapped up in that dopamine rush of quantified popularity. So that's like the biggest thing right now, I think, is like quantified popularity legislation. But because it is so core to the business model, it's like a huge uphill battle. There is a really compelling idea that's come up with Francis's testimony and with folks at Center for Humane Technology as well, talking about throttling virality. So making it so that you can only, after 2 friends share your post, the share button disappears. So just to answer that question, quantified popularity, and then more immediately, like this is something Facebook could do tomorrow without regulation, is kind of reducing virality and getting rid of share buttons.
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, so I know the question asked for specific recommendations, but I think my answer is vague. I was thinking about how to make it more specific, but I have no idea. It focuses on like Instagram for kids, which I know has been, held to a pause, but also YouTube for kids. It amazes me how, these big tech companies are aware that like these apps and these platforms are harming people who have like a fairly developed brain, if not completely. And they're still like, okay, I know this is the problem, but let's also go to those people who don't have their brains developed, like a tiny bit of development. So I feel like there should be a lot more regulation on those apps that are harming the younger generations, because they can't advocate for themselves like how we are advocating for ourselves right now. So I think there needs to be a lot of work done there. I might be ignorant, there might be work going on, but I think that there needs to be more regulation in those apps.
Yeah, I mean, if I could jump in for a moment as well, there's a couple of things that I was thinking about personally. And one is, back to what John was saying about how engagement plays a huge role. I want to talk about like whitelisting and kind of regulating the process of doing that. Currently there's a lot of high profile people that are controlling the narrative. And by, giving people sort of an equal representation and putting them against the same standards, you're kind of creating a more representative, content. You're creating more representative content. And I think that's a big thing that, governments can do. Another thing is, the fact that all of this is a monopoly, right? I mean, if we want to think about the biggest names in the entire industries, you can kind of list them with one hand. And I think encouraging innovation, the development of different business models, different pricing structures, because right now, for example, Facebook, 98% of its revenue comes from ads, which encourages the need to keep people engaged. And, rethinking that model or rethinking, the structure of certain algorithms and kind of expanding that base to new companies and, allowing more people to enter the market, I think some kind of regulation around that would be helpful. In terms of like Photoshop, I actually have a little bit of a controversial, point of view in terms of this. I don't think that by, citing that this is Photoshopped, I don't think that would be something that genuinely helps, in the sense that I feel it often is shaming to the content creators who put out Photoshop. Like within that same ideology, should people who wear heavy makeup put on a little warning, or should people who wear fake filters include that? Or what about people who've had plastic surgery? I think that that should also be taken into consideration because it's both real world and other.
I think that it's really regarding just the stigma of the word. If we were to take the word back and redefine it, like, we don't think that women are, you know, bad people for wearing makeup, because we shouldn't. And we shouldn't think that people are bad people for wearing whatever they want or photoshopping their body. I think that the stigma of the word should be taken away, and it should just become a reality and something that we live with, because it is. And, you know, it shouldn't be a negative thing, and it should be whatever we want it to be, but not as a means to hurt other people or bring people down.
Yeah, I want to highlight something Shivani mentioned about there being, you know, Facebook really having monopoly power, especially over social networking. I think 4 of the top 7 most used apps in the United States are either Facebook or owned by Facebook: Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp. And, you know, the sort of lack of choice, we should note, just on a quick positive note, that there is historic bipartisan antitrust legislation moving through Congress, cleared the House Judiciary Committee, and the first companion bill was introduced in the Senate today with 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans. A nod to your point, John, earlier, that this is quickly becoming an issue that transcends partisan division. But I had a question here from Alexa in the audience, who wanted to know if folks on the panel had learned or are aware of any alternative social media options that eliminate quantified popularity algorithms and promote digital well-being.
I know one app that doesn't really do quantified popularity as much and is still very popular, and that's Visco. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it. It's a photo editing app, but not Photoshop. It's more filters and stuff like that to make an aesthetic. It's like a Pinterest, but a little bit more social, because you can get notifications when somebody likes or reposts your stuff, but people cannot see who follows you, and you cannot see who follows people. So there's no quantifying of any sort. The only thing is reposting. So if an image is reposted by a friend, then you know that that image was popular or circulated around a little bit. But it kind of cuts out quantified popularity altogether, I'd say.
That's a great example. It is possible, regardless of what the social media companies will try to tell you, it is possible to create tools that like are there when you need it and facilitate offline connections and aren't constantly trying to pull you in when you don't need it. So I think dispelling that myth is like so important.
Totally. And these problems feed into each other, right? I mean, Facebook wants to protect its market dominance. So the idea of there being a healthier alternative, you know, we've seen how Facebook treats competitors. Instagram was once a competitor. WhatsApp was once a privacy preserving messaging app, but now here we are in a world where Facebook owns everything. I want to sort of, we're coming up on time, but I want to ask one last question that hopefully will leave us on a positive note, because, you know, we are here together. We're I think doing what needs to be done, which is convening people with a desire to change this and fix it for the next generation, who recognize the harms and want other people to recognize those harms too. So I want to ask you all what we could be doing, those of us in the audience, to raise awareness for this issue, to educate our friends, our families, our neighbors about this issue, and ultimately bring about enough consensus and awareness where we can apply pressure and bring about positive change.
So I did this literally yesterday. One of my friends came up to me and said, hey, I'm struggling with my social media addiction. And I was a little shocked because that person was relatively aware that they were really addicted, but never did anything to stop that addiction. So that was a breaking point for me yesterday. Tell your friends, your networks to watch The Social Dilemma. I think that movie is groundbreaking. And whenever anyone comes and asks me what they should because everyone's different. What works for you does not work for the person next to you. And so The Social Dilemma helps people think and kind of come up with their action plan. So I'd say, The Social Dilemma, it's a great base point to build off of. So that's what I think.
Another way is, LookUp has a great hub that we're creating, and we invite everyone to join us or even participate in our startup innovation challenge that we are launching, and to bring these new ideas for this issue, and you can get awards, you can get connected, mentorships, and other things. So I think starting with the community and getting to know like this event, at least you will get new ideas and move forward.
I love that. It all starts with community. I'll quote my old boss, who I always, he's a political hero of mine. He quotes an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so I think that starts with building community and bringing about meaningful, lasting structural change.
Well, we have far to go, and we've got a lot of togetherness over the next 4 days. So there's more to come. This was brilliant, guys. I mean, I literally have chills, and I'm so excited to stick around for the Live More Screen Less workshop right after this, because they're going to walk us through what they've developed as a youth or a youth design program that they then went and lobbied their state legislature for and got funding for it to go into school. So this is a real, like, you want to figure out how to get it done. We want to do what these guys did. So stick around for that one. And then tomorrow, Governor Patrick Deval Patrick of Massachusetts, former Governor Deval Patrick of Massachusetts, he's the co-chair of the commission, Future of Tech Commission for President Biden. He's going to lead a panel very similar to this about the future of tech. That's at noon tomorrow. So it's more probably for the parents in the audience and the adults who are not in school during the day. And then we have a big UK presence tomorrow afternoon, because we are launching as well from the UK. And they are also going to have a panel with another film group called I Am Gen Z that's not released yet, but it's about to come out. They're going to be doing a panel, and we've got just gazillions of panels on Saturday and Sunday. So please come back. Rishi, thank you so much. I really appreciate your guidance. John, your well-educated and activist perspective on here was much appreciated. All of you, brilliant. And I'm so grateful for all that you're doing, and lean on your adult allies.